So now let's talk about how to use pitch class sets in an actual piece. The first thing is we want to limit their use to things that are audible. We don't want to use them in ways that are inaudible because otherwise it's just random patterns. There are lots of set relationships that are mathematically logical. For example, an 8-note set contains an awful lot of 3-note sets. But the problem is, unless there's a very specific interval profile, nobody's going to hear those relationships. So you might as well not have them for all the difference it'll make to the listener. Again, a 10-note chord contains many, many smaller chords, but that in itself is not very useful because there are so many intervals in a 10-note chord that the smaller chords are not going to stand out in any way unless you specifically orchestrate them or set them up in the texture that way. So, first thing, use sets which are small. Let's say not more than 5 notes. Second ones, use a set whose interval vector is unusual in some way. You don't want a vector which has all the intervals pretty much the same. You want something which favors one interval or another, which is going to make it more likely it has a definite character. When you're using a set, there's also the question of how you move from one transposition to another. Let's look at example 14a. Well, 14a is a short little set. It's set 3, number 3. I've written out the first few transpositions, and I've also written out the inversions. So instead of going up a second, up a third, it's down a second, down a third. My point is just, I haven't written all the transpositions, but I've written enough to show that if you look at the slurs I have written in the example are common tones. In other words, if I want to move from the first transposition to the second one, there's one common tone. That's the B, okay? You can look for the number of common tones. If you go to a transposition that has no common tones, it's more contrasting than if you go to a transposition that does have common tones or has multiple common tones. So that is exactly like in tonal voice leading. Common tones are a way to make things smooth. If there's never any common tones, it's going to be more contrast more often. Usually you'll have sometimes there will be common tones and sometimes there won't. And that would be roughly the equivalent in tonal harmony of some progressions having all notes changing, some are having some notes changing, and some are having no notes changing. Okay, so that's a simple issue of voice leading, and that's where you need to make a table of the transposition so you can see what are the common tones between one transposition and another one. The effect of doing that is that the voice leading is audible, because we know that the limitations of classical voice leading, that is to say common tones and small interval movements, are a result of the ear. They were not invented abstractly, they're the result of what's easy to sing. So if we respect those conventions, that means the music will be relatively coherent by definition. If you look at example 14c, what I've done is I've written a short little piece based on that set. Let's listen to it. So 14c is based on the same 3-note set we just looked at in 14a and b. Okay, it's a little 3-note set with a definite character. Notice that I've set it up with a 3-note rhythmic motive. So the 3-note motive encourages you to sort of make the relations of the set. If you look at the first bar, that's really arranging the 3 notes in the first presentation in a different order. But the motive is rhythmically grouped into 3. Second bar, but arranged. Third bar. So again, same set, just rearranging the notes within the set, but the rhythmic motive focuses it by 3s. Then in measure 4 and 5, I have them as chords. They're 3-note chords, and each 3-note chord presents the set as a harmony. For the ending, what I've done is I've made the texture thicker by doubling in octaves. It goes down into the lowest register of the piece. The rhythm slows down, so the cadence comes from just the change in the texture and register. Let's listen to it again. Now let's look at example 15. Example 15 comes from a set which I've just written out at the beginning. Let's listen to it. In example 15, what I've done is I've made the melody the same set, and then the same thing transposed, and the harmony is in chords. Each chord is just a different transposition of the set. So both the melody and the harmony are derived from the set. It's a 4-note set with a definite character, so this one is fairly coherent. You can hear a certain character to it. And again, it makes it audible because I keep the pattern small and the set is small. So that gives you some idea of how to use PC sets in a way that's musically audible.